Hello, PAX Australia. Welcome to PAX Online for 2021. My name is Adrian Webb. I'm the Manager of Virtual Worlds within the Department of Defence as part of the Australian Federal Government. Welcome to Gamifying Government, the Digital Revolution. This is our fourth Gamifying Government talk, and I'm lucky and privileged that we get to do this. And we have some pretty amazing speakers joining us for this year. First off, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country, and in the spirit of reconciliation, the members of the public service here today acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. The next formality is our disclaimer, and the materials and views expressed here today and the members' own personal views and not that specifically of their respective government departments unless specifically stated. Such material is assembled in good faith but does not necessarily reflect the considered views of the public service or indicate a commitment to a particular course of action. Any companies or products mentioned do not constitute endorsement of those entities or any associated organisations, products or services. Alrighty. Now the formalities are done. Like I said, I'd like to welcome everyone. My name is Adrian Webb. I'm the Manager of Virtual Worlds at the Department of Defence. My role is to look at new and emerging technologies and seeing where they can be applied within defence and the capabilities that they can provide, specifically around training, but more and more in a variety of different areas. There is another panel for defence coming up or just been, and that will obviously explain that a little bit more. But I'd like to welcome Joe Sharp, Terry Ann Simmons and Chris Neal. Apologies if I said that wrong, Chris.
No, that's right.
And I will get them to introduce themselves, starting off with Joe Sharp.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm Joe Sharp. I'm the Director of the Screen Industry section in the Office for the Arts, which is in Department of Infrastructure. We have a range of policies and programs that support the Australian screen industry, and recently in the budget the government announced the digital games tax offset, which we will be developing and administering alongside the screen offsets that are already in place. We work closely with Screen Australia and the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, and also Australian Children's Television Foundation and Ozfilm, so have really great broad kind of range of stakeholders and some really interesting subject matter.
Indeed. All right, Terry Ann.
Hi, my name is Terry Ann Simmons and I am the Acting Head of Digital Experience for the Australian War Memorial. And hi to Chris and to Joe and of course Adrian. So the section that I look after in the War Memorial, we have responsibility for the War Memorial's website, and we've got quite a few microsites as well. We also look after our social media presence. But the thing that is probably really interesting to PAX viewers is the projects that we've done more recently. So we've done a lot of work in the virtual reality space and also with 3D technology and surfacing that online, taking collection items that are in the War Memorial's National Collection and making that available to as many people as possible in a variety of formats.
One. Thank you very much, Terry Ann. All right, and last but not least, Chris, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Chris Neal, so I'm Assistant Curator at the National Film and Sound Archive. I've been with the NFSA for about 10 years now, but in 2019 we started seriously diving into the world of video games preservation. So I've been working with the project team to look at why, how, and what's involved in exactly with games preservation, which has been really exciting.
Nice one. Thank you very much, Chris. All right, so now I'll ask if everyone can give a little bit of a spiel about some of the projects that they're working on or initiatives that they're taking forward and how that relates to the video games industry here in Australia and potentially beyond. Joe, we will start with yourself, please.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so great to have something, really exciting that we're working on now in this space this year, and that is the digital games tax offset that was announced in the budget as part of the digital economy strategy. That the aim of the DGTO is to promote the growth of Australia's digital games development industry and increase its market share in a rapidly expanding global sector. The offset will make Australia a more competitive destination for games development. Importantly, it'll also be supporting investment, but also those highly skilled transferable jobs and growth in that area. We know that 5,000 students enroll in games and games related courses each year, so wonderful to have a mechanism that will help to grow the sector and find opportunities to capitalize on all of that talent. So we had some announced parameters at the time of the budget for the DGTO. That's that it's a 30% offset on qualifying games expenditure. There's a $500,000 threshold and a couple of other parameters around not covering games that include gambling and games requiring the ability to be classified otherwise or achieve a classification rating. Otherwise, the rest of the details are being developed through consultation with the sector, and we've been undertaking some pretty broad consultation with Australian businesses, international businesses, and other sort of areas that work with the sector, as well as the IGEA, and of course working closely with our colleagues at Treasury and the Australian Taxation Office. So really exciting time ahead, and looking forward to working more closely with the sector going forward and seeing all the great opportunities of those kind of crossover skills and serious games and all of the different sort of areas that the benefits can spill into.
So you certainly have me at serious games. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
Nice one. And I know that a lot of people in the industry are very interested to see how that develops, and obviously to help and contribute towards that to make sure that it's the best opportunities that we can get for our industry as well and continue to see it grow. So it's really awesome to hear that that the Office of the Arts is looking into this and looking to do this.
Yeah, it's a really great opportunity. So excellent to have met so many of the businesses in recent times. I look forward to working towards 1 July 2022, which is when the offset will be in operation from.
We'll be here sooner than we think.
Don't say that. I mean, do say that. It's good, yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you very much, Joe. I'll now ask Terry-Ann if she can have a chat with some of the projects that she's been working on utilising games industry and the games technologies.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to say that is really exciting news. I think that's a really positive move with that games offset tax. I think that will make a really big difference. So we're kind of wrapping up a couple of our projects in the gaming space. So I mentioned at the start, we've got On Closer Inspection, which was a series of immersive 360 experiences. So in the National Collection, it's probably important to say there's actually 4 million objects in the National Collection. And look, Chris at the NFSA might have more.
No, you've got us beat by 1 million, I think. Yeah.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah,
it's not a competition. But a wonderful collection that they do have. What is interesting, I think, is that probably sometimes the public aren't aware of the items that are in the collection, and the interesting thing, I think, is that they can be really small things, like physically small, or they can be some of our large technology objects. So as a part of this On Closer Inspection, the name kind of gives it away, we were taking large objects such as the Bushmaster. There were 5 different objects. We had the Hudson Bomber. We also had the Adelaide class frigate. I mentioned Lancaster? Did I? No, Hudson. Yep, Hudson, Bushmaster, and our very first one was. Has that been 5 yet? The Grit tank. Getting the Bushmaster and the tank mixed up. Don't tell anyone. So those are really large physical objects, and The accessibility for those obviously is limited to being physically there. So this virtual reality actually gives people an opportunity to get up close with it. What we're really keen on is exploring the stories connected to it too. So behind every object, small, large, otherwise, there is a really significant Australian story behind it. And so this is like, I guess, a gateway into that. And using VR technology, I think, is a really interesting way to do it. So that project had wrapped up a little earlier this year. And then also our 3D treasures, which we've just released 25 objects, which is the final 25 objects. Now I say final, but the memorial is getting really heavily invested into 3D scanning of our objects. Which is really interesting from a number of perspectives, but surfacing those is another step that we're going into. We've done it for this project to really highlight particular things that normally we can't even touch. So things like Vivian Bullwinkle's dress that she was wearing when she was shot. That's not something any of us can get necessarily up close with, but using this kind of technology we can. So for us, we're kind of looking at taking those learnings from the project and going, okay, we'll make that as a part of our everyday practice as well. And then I must say, the project that I'm excited about, that's not so much gaming, but also I guess it just shows the diversity of what we do and what we're trying to achieve, is we're looking at making improvements to our website. And our website's like our biggest kind of communication tool. And so that's really, really important that that's interesting and engaging. And that's whether that's gaming or like a kind of, I guess, a satellite to gaming, it's still really important to think about how we work with people and how we engage with people. So that's the thing that's keeping me busy at the moment.
Lots of things going on at the moment at the War Memorial. Thank you very much, Terry Ann. So we'll jump on to Chris. Chris, would you like to explain some of the projects that you're working on at the moment and how you guys are going about that at the National Film and Sound Archive?
Yeah, sure. So the main project is sort of folding in games to our regular collecting activities. So 1 million less than the War Memorial, but we've got 3 million items in our collection. So not just film and sound, but radio and television from the beginning until literally TV being recorded today, YouTube videos, VR, interactive movies, documents, objects, and now video games. So games have always, even though we announced an initial 8 games we were focusing on preserving a couple of years ago, games have always formed part of the collection. So, but actually diving into working out how to actively preserve them and provide access to them is what we were looking at a couple of years ago. So, games are a huge part of Australians' culture, as everyone watching would know. 2 out of 3 Australians play games. So there's no chance of them going away anytime soon. So a representative collection that's built to tell the story of Australia. Games are a huge part of that story. And audiovisual media, so the material in our collection that we do collect, I think really evoke a time and a space more than anything else, I think. So you can read a description of something, but doesn't really compare to seeing or hearing that thing. And I think games with the level of interactivity sort of provide an extra layer on top of this. And there's a special sort of connection I find that people have with the past that interactivity brings. Beyond nostalgia too, but everyone can kind of, I think, relate to that feeling of playing a game from their childhood and reconnecting to what they're seeing and wanting to show other people what they saw. So in 2019, we announced the 8 Australian games that were selected for the collection. They were The Hobbit, Halloween Harry, Shadowrun, LA Noire, Submerged, Hollow Knight, Florence, and Espire 1 VR Operative. So we thought they not only kind of tell the story of Australia's game industry from near the very beginning, when things came out of pinball parlors into arcades and then into the home, but also, and then the rise of the AAA industry after that, and now the uptake in Indian mobile games after the GFC. But also selected these 8 games to make our job as difficult as possible. So, there's a wide variety of formats there. We've already got a wide variety of formats in the collection, as you'd imagine, audiovisual media, and what you would have seen the beginnings of and ends of within our own lifetimes. Games are notorious for new technologies and new formats, and now born digital games, mobile games, VR games are a sort of extra level of complication. So within that selection, we did try and make our job really tough, and as well also kind of have conversations about what it really means to preserve a game too. So are you just taking in the game itself? What other extra contextual information do you have to look for to actually say that you've added a game to the collection? So yeah, it's been great fun. I think there's a lot of different skill sets involved. So I'm a curator, but we have technical staff as well looking at it, and yeah, figuring out and solving a lot of problems has been part of this project. At the end of this, we should be in a really good position to make games collecting a regular thing, fold it into all of our other media that we're collecting day to day.
And I was going to say, Adrian, do you mind if I ask Chris a question on that?
No, go for it.
So does that mean you've been playing games at work?
There's less of that than I would like. Yes.
Okay, all right,
Yeah,
all right.
it doesn't happen too much. I would love to say that my boss can catch me playing video games and I can just say, this is what you pay me for. But yeah, it's not that exciting. Like there's a lot of you're staring at data when you're getting old games together, looking at a lot of folders, getting to see a lot of beautiful concept art. But yeah, not that would, yeah, I'd like to be playing old games. That'd be great.
I do remember a talk that I went to in 2019, Chris, about it's not just the game itself that you guys are looking to archive, but also the marketing material, the concept developments, any of the game design documents. It's not just the visual aspects of it and the game itself, but there's so much other components that come with collecting a game to say that you have now collected that game for posterity, in essence.
Yeah, exactly. So we're working with we've got a project team with ACME down in Melbourne and the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences in Sydney too, because it's something we're all interested in, which is fantastic. The more games in more public institutions, the better. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that I would classify as sort of impossible to archive. Like lots of parents would have kids playing Roblox, Fortnite, Minecraft after school, and to capture the experience and tell the story of how kids are interacting with those games, you couldn't really do just by taking that game and putting it on a shelf. Part of it, it's those games are a lot more than that. They're development tools, they're communications tools, it's how, especially during lockdowns, it's how people are staying in contact with each other too. It's just the game is something that happens in the background. So yeah, it's you can sort of the work of preservation is sort of never done. It's just sort of like how deep do you want to go in terms of collecting something. It doesn't really stop because people will rediscover games. There's streaming culture as well. There's esports. There's long tails for games as well in terms of retro gaming. So you can put a stop on. You can collect a game when it's new. Someone may discover it in 10 years' time, remix it. I know like Twitch Plays Pokemon was a spin on existing games, redeveloped for streaming audiences too. So yeah, it's a really hard job because yeah, people yeah, there's a long tail to a lot of these things.
Yeah, and you got to draw a line somewhere, and not everyone's always going to be happy with that line, are they?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like whenever no one's going to be able to collect everything. There's 1,000 apps released on the App Store every day. A large portion of those are games, so it's also being curatorially selective, and also just developing policies and procedures to sort of assist curatorially driven selection of these games too.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Really
Thanks.
appreciate that deep dive into archiving. Who would have
Cheers.
guessed that we would be talking about that in a games talk? It's all good. I'll jump into some of the questions that I've got here, and I'll start off with yourself, Joe. Not really games related at all, but what interested you in joining the public service, and obviously specifically now that you're in your current role?
Yeah, I mean, I found my way here, I think, like a lot of people. I joined the public service doing something else entirely and found my way into the arts. Just really interesting. I'd been working in heritage and I was interested in staying in kind of that cultural area. So I moved into the arts and straight into screen policy. And, I thought, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I wasn't wrong. It's been in a really, really amazing area. It obviously is subject to such kind of fast-paced development. There is always something to learn. It's been a fantastic ride, and really great to now be working more closely. We've been obviously interested in games for some time, so really good to build that in more. But yeah, not by design, but a very happy accident to have ended up here.
Fair enough. And Terry Ann, what about yourself? What made you decide to join the public service?
Yeah, I mean, definitely can relate to the happy accident. And I think that my career, I think many like gamers and web developers in particular could probably relate. I often dip in and out of the public service. And I often work on projects. So, once a project's wrapped up, then I move on to the next thing. And I think that's the thing to be aware of. There's a lot of flexibility to be had, and there's no chance of getting stale. When I first came to Canberra, so I'm in Canberra, I was working, I guess, in terms of comms and marketing, and mostly in print production, so publications, and just before, I guess, people understood that websites were such an important communication tool. And so I guess what spoke to me about websites and working on websites as a communication tool is that there was some creativity there, but also there was that immediate gratification. And also if there's a mistake made, you can fix it straight away. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect. And I still enjoy that aspect. I get less excited though if there is a mistake being made, but I think I have made some doozies. So from there, I think that's I guess I shifted from print publication focus to what can we do with this thing called a website, and web development as really pushing that as a communication tool, and with that was also social media. So government in particular were a little slow, I think, and so in the department I was working in, I really pushed for that as a way that we can talk to people, because they were already there. And nowadays it's just commonplace, it's no big deal, but I think back then it was a big deal. And I guess now, just in terms of where we are with 2021, you can see that things just keep on changing. And so there are opportunities, there are things to learn about. And I think the thing, if I could, give one kind of takeaway, is that it's working for the public service isn't just one size fits all. It's varied, and it varies from large departments to small organisations. There's lots of different opportunities out there.
Yeah, you only need to go on to some place like APS Jobs and stuff to see, and scroll down that list of organisations to see all the different aspects that come under the public service's remit. There's so many different departments.
And there's commonalities, and then that's something that's actually quite positive, because I think once you understand the machinations of a department, then, you know, I think you can go to a different area and go, oh, that's right, that's kind of how it works, even though the portfolio might be completely different. And I think if you think about, you know, the national parks as opposed to defence, like there's so many different aspects, and then how you use technology to actually you know, better work with that kind of subject matter. It's really interesting. It opens up some doors there for sure.
Thank you, Terry Ann. You're Chris. What about yourself? How did you join the public service, and what makes it so fun to be in the public service?
Yeah, so I also kind of fell into it. There's a lot of obsessive people that work at the NFSA, as like any institution that deals with the collection. People become really passionate about the collection and the material that they're handling while working there. So I'm one of those obsessives, and it's something that made a lot of sense when the opportunity came up. I was a huge nerd as a kid and would, you know, record videotapes off the television, create a catalogue of them, and I hope to imagine that someone would actually want to borrow them off me. Never happened, but I still have the catalogue. So it's
There's still time, isn't there?
Pardon?
There's still time to borrow them off you.
Exactly. Yeah. Really
find a
should do something
VCR
about that collection. Yeah, exactly. Got to digitize. So yeah, it made a lot of sense when I fell into the role. I did start as a part-time job just straight out of uni, and then hung around because I enjoyed it so much. So yeah, there's a lot of specialist and generalist areas at the NFSA too, and have bounced around the organisation a bit, and loved working in big and small teams across the place. We are quite a small organisation, so yeah, you get to know everyone really well, and get a really good understanding of the organisation and place too. And you feel good building a collection in a public institution too, because it's like, well, this is something that's going to outlive me. It's going to outlive everyone that works here, and you're putting effort into something that will be around for hundreds of years to come. So yeah, you do feel a sense of satisfaction contributing to that.
Yeah, and I think all three of us, or all four of us, you know, have aspects of contributing to stories, you know, and telling these type of stories for generations to come, be that through support, be that through, you know, archiving histories of conflict, or archiving histories of culture.
Definitely.
I think it's all really important aspects that we need to be able to keep, because, you know, that's what they keep on saying. You look to the past to shape the future.
Definitely.
And I guess just on that too, I think, you know, the work that the NFSA does is so critical, and that really is like preserving our history. It's so interesting, but it's also so important to understanding time and place, and I think you know, in terms of the memorial, what I guess people don't realise is that we're a museum, we're a shrine, so and we're an archive as well, and so I think it's like that's a really interesting kind of place to be in, to have those different roles. And so the thing that always resonates with me is how important the memorial are to people that have served and their families. It really is, for want of a better word, it's really humbling, but it's actually really, really touching, because it does mean something to those people, and it's, you know, a part of us just recognizing that their sacrifice. And I think sometimes when people say, you know, recognizing sacrifice, it gets overused, but really it's recognizing that people have sacrifice in whatever means, and, you know, there's always controversy about, you know, why things happen, but again, that's that you know, place in time, and it's about recognizing that people did contribute and they did sacrifice, and that we can pay respects to that. And to be a part of that and help support that, that's really interesting too. That's really actually quite an honour to do so.
Yeah, I think Adrian, really, you hit the nail on the head mentioning stories. I think that's, the commonality here is that everybody is involved in the telling of, kind of the story of Australia in some way, whether that's providing support mechanisms or actually, supporting those artifacts, stories, objects, experiences to be available to the public to learn and and experience together.
Certainly. All right, we'll jump on to the next question, which is because we've had a chat about how our different departments in different areas are using games and games-based technologies. How do we see the games technologies and supports fitting into the way that government delivers services and experiences to Australian citizens and beyond in the future? And I guess Terry Ann, we can start with yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It will evolve pretty. I hate using organically, but it will evolve as it's meant to. Because I think sometimes when it's contrived, it doesn't work. So I think it's about kind of seeing where things are really building momentum and then being aware of that. I think one of it's a simple thing, but I think it's been a powerful thing where we've had, the kind of help chatbots and AI to help with that. I think that's really actually quite useful and particularly can be actually a way of being efficient with how the public service deals with questions from the public, and also supporting people through what can be seen sometimes as like a difficult journey. And it's the public service over the past 5 to 10 years has made massive inroads about user-centered design and making things easier for people. So I think in terms of gaming, I think there are some real opportunities. I think Chris mentioned before Roblox, and how that's working in terms of the family setting, and that's huge. I think just kind of where that fits naturally, it will happen. So it's a bit vague, but I think anytime I've seen it kind of being forced, it just doesn't work. So it's about, okay, what is working really well. One of the things is slightly, I guess, and it could evolve, but one of the things that's interesting is like where TikTok fits in the landscape, if it fits in the landscape. Different kind of emerging things that's probably not emerging now, but seeing the growth of that. I think it's just being on the pulse of those things. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a crystal ball thing at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess it's not just using gaming technologies and practices, or gaming technologies for gaming's sake. It's using gaming engines and gaming capabilities like VR headsets and 360 videos and those kind of things, and utilizing them in slightly different ways as well. It's not all about playing a game in the end to engage, but you can certainly use some of the advancements that have happened from the industry to promote those kind of things. And I guess, Joe, you're seeing that quite a lot within that film sector, and especially here within Australia. Working. Seeing the visual effects aspects. When you're watching Marvel movies, you're seeing the Australian logos at the very end of those kind of things because of all the visual effects that have been done from that.
Yeah, Australia's got a really strong visual effects industry, and attracts production or work from overseas for those sorts of large budget productions, but also in all manner of productions that are made in Australia as well. And there is that always evolving kind of element, and the blurring of the lines, the crossing over of skills between sectors. So between kind of animation and visual effects and games kind of sectors now. It's those really skilled, creative, and technical skill sets that are really coming to the fore at the moment. And it's they're all sectors that are really always on the cutting edge of technology. So it's an interesting space for keep making sure that support mechanisms kind of respond to that evolving nature.
And some of the work you guys are doing with the film school, I can't specifically remember the exact name. Is that do you know if that's been looking at different ways of utilizing games-based technologies in there as well, or?
It's Australian Film, Television, Radio School. Do you mean? Yeah, yeah. They're really excellent future focused organisation that is always looking at the way the sector's evolving and the skill sets that their students will need to have, and what people who are already mid-career, the skills development opportunities that they can take advantage of as well. It's certainly as an area to provide education. They're always looking to the next step and what the sector is moving into to make sure that their capacity and skills development is there, following in its wake, or keeping up with those sort of advancements.
Thank you, Joe. And Chris, what about yourself? How do you see gaming technologies fitting into the way government engage with their citizens and develops different services?
Yeah, sure. So I'm hoping that in the future, the services we're providing are as equally useful to the games industry as the public. So there can't really be proper preservation without access to the materials too. And there's already been, as I was saying earlier, that level of interactivity, I think, provides a deeper connection for the access to some of that material too. So, and that includes, traditional flat media as well. So I think that's where things will head for audiovisual archives. I think increased interactivity in games technologies and the use of access to traditional media. But yeah, what I mean by providing that service is, becoming a trusted digital repository for contemporary games developers to deposit collection material with us for safekeeping, but also provide on the other side of that open access to users to in collaboration share those collections openly and interactively as well with the public, and all of those is going to require a lot of skills and expertise, a lot that align with people in the games industry as well. So yeah, it's a really exciting area.
Yeah, and obviously we can see the public service at the moment is looking for that digital talent and digital capability. They continually talk about that through things like the Digital Transformation Agency. How does yourself and I'll ask the others in a second about that push for digital talent and digital capability within the public service?
It's vital for us because we've got a big push at the moment to digitize all of our magnetic media as part of Deadline 2025, in which after or before 2025 as a deadline, the technology and skills to actually digitize that material will be gone. But after that point, you're creating an entirely digital collection. So you're both digitizing the material we already have in the collection, and we're creating a new collection of born digital media as well, which require completely different skill sets to acquiring analog material too. So yeah, it's increasingly vital. Digital skill sets, software developer skill sets, for software preservation, digital preservation, specific skill sets. It's just going to become more and more important to us as our collection becomes more and more digital. And that's the collection side, and then there's the access side. everyone being inside their homes this year proves that access to collections is going to have to be digital. That's going to be become a huge part of future skills development as well.
Agreed. What about yourself, Terry Ann? Would anything to add about the digital revolution that the APS is trying to go through at the moment?
Do you mean in terms of out to the public, or the DTA driving that digital engagement?
I think both. So obviously they're engaging with the public to try to bring in that digital talent and showcase their digital capability, but also in the other work that they're doing as well.
Look, I think it's a really vital role that they play. What I think has been really positive is they've actually grown in the content space as well. I think it would be really kind of remiss not to connect that kind of content and how we display that in amongst the kind of development conversation, because they go hand in hand. So I think that's really important that there is a focus on that and ongoing education more broadly. I think also just in terms of engaging talent, I think that's really important. I think in terms of kind of nurturing talent and supporting talent, I think there needs to be, they put in such a good effort, but I think it'd be interesting to see how that digital profession kind of element grows, because I think if you are going from project to project, if you are, I guess, working in an organisation, you've only been in that organisation and that's where you stay, those are both kind of gaps where you could become isolated. So it's how do we continue that conversation? I think obviously with repositories and things like that, like there's a way to communicate, but I guess, for people such as myself that isn't so tech heavy, I think it's how do we kind of keep nurturing, growing and learning. So it's just kind of, I think there's an opportunity there to really keep on facilitating those kind of discussions and support.
Nice one. What about yourself, Joe? How do you see the APS in general, and obviously DTA are the ones really driving it, but how do you see that engagement with digital talent driving digital capability?
I think it's a necessary engagement. So I think the kind of principal remit of the public service is to provide service to the public, and the public is engaging with things digitally more and more across everything that they do. So I think you would envisage the future, or or see more of a rollout now of seeing delivery of services being tailored to that easier access for the public, and that's through that kind of digital engagement. I think is it's the reality of how people engage, and so services need to follow in that space, I think.
And do you think that they're pushing that right aspect in that skill set and driving that that push to get those digital skill sets within the public service? Like, are you finding more and more people within our public service that are well versed and savvy within the range of different digital engagements that we have to do, from social media to games to video and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as well as just my observation from people that I work with on a daily basis, it's people upskilling, but also as people come through, graduates and people enter the public service, there is that stronger skill set, and it kind of it helps to upskill everybody that might be a little bit more left behind. People who didn't necessarily start out their career with social media in their sphere of reality, and now that is something that is vitally important to the public. And so I think, as people with those skills come on board, it brings up the general skills across the base of the public service.
I know that they've been working quite hard on their different academies and those kind of things to help drive that digital and have those areas that people can learn on the job and those kind of aspects. And obviously, I know from a defence perspective, we've seen social media managers and those kind of things come into defence and look after defence's Facebook and defence's Instagrams and all those kind of things to make sure that those right messages are getting across in the right way as well. And it's certainly engaging with different people there as well. I think we did a major exercise and it had its own Facebook page that was putting up a whole lot of photos about some of the activities and videos as well about some of the activities that they could showcase and were doing. And it was really interesting, even someone that works in that department, really interesting to see how that work was being done, because it was being done, something that we've been working on for 18 months, but something being done, thousands of kilometres away that you don't get to see when you're sitting at a desk here in Canberra, working up in Shoalwater Bay. We're coming near the end of our panel, but I just thought I'd probably ask yourselves if there is any questions that you as panelists would like to ask one another in relation to either games development, games technologies, different practices, APS aspects in that digital space. Feel free.
Joe, I just wanted to ask sort of what your hopes are for the offset and kind of where you see the future of the Australian games industry going.
So I think, it aligns really closely to the intent for all of the offsets we have, which is to be, best fit for purpose for the sector and for government to ensure that mechanism is useful but also can be effectively rolled out. It's the intent, I think, is to grow the Australian sector, and same with the screen offsets, is to build the capacity and the ability for the sectors to create amazing productions or amazing games development, and really I guess another a great thing to see is people having opportunities to be employed in these fields with really exciting creative skills that they're vital. They cut across everything that we do in life, and so it's great to have another mechanism to kind of support Australian businesses to be in this space and Australians to participate in this space.
Fantastic.
And hopefully it's, this is a starting point, and potentially there may be others, and I'm not saying that there will be, but hopefully this, springs on to other supports for, larger industries, for smaller industries, especially in Australia with the indie devs that we have and the indie culture that we've got. Hopefully this is the first of many engagements to support that the games industry here in Australia. Did anyone else have any other questions that they wanted to ask?
I think I've got like 1,000 questions. I'm like, where I would just I could go for another 5 hours asking Joe and Chris questions. So
well, we got 5 minutes.
Yeah,
so.
5 minutes. Yeah, it's hard to pick one. I guess one for Joe. I'll do one each, but for Joe, I guess because you've been working in arts broadly for some period of time, and obviously going from screen to this now, how have you seen the industry change, and how do you bring people along the journey, I guess, in terms of talking to government, but also even your colleagues?
I think so I've been in the screen area for about 10 years, and it's a sector that's been, important to the public, but also important to the government, understands the cultural remit, the importance of the sector, but also the strength of the sector as an employer. And likewise, the games offset reflects the government's appreciation that that's a sector that provides those kind of opportunities. I guess the kind of the changes that we've seen have been in that digitization and moving to streaming platforms, and the rate of knots at which that's picked up, and just the proliferation of opportunity that there is for Australian content to be seen by audiences, and a whole lot of different opportunities for content creators to get their content out there. Obviously, those sorts of opportunities always come with challenges that need to be balanced as well. But it's certainly there are so many more avenues for Australians to access content and the world to access content, be that television, film, or games content as well. So I think the world's really big now, and content creators are working in that kind of global scale in a way that they didn't necessarily have the opportunity to before as much, as readily. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time.
And
I think
and
so too.
and just to add to Joe's point at the end there, yeah, that's what's really different about the games industry to us. So a lot of the other collecting areas, it's relatively self-contained industries that made by Australians for Australians, where the games industry is, I played games as a kid that I had no idea were Australian made. Talking to the developers now is sort of blowing my mind, saying that was made by a guy in Brisbane at the same time as, I was a few hundred kilometers south of him there. So yeah, it's kind of really interesting seeing just how much we um, sort of punch above our weight on a world stage in the games industry. It's really good to see.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
so true as well. Like you look at even when the birth of the mobile phone, the touch mobile phone, and flight control was such a big
Mm,
game, and people don't know that. Always remember that was made here in Australia, and Fruit Ninja as well. Those kind of games that really helped bring that touch and utilize those touch functionalities that were brand new at the time to a whole, an easy way to allow people to understand how to utilize their phones.
yeah,
Um,
that's so true. Yeah.
And that's what builds into like the advances we make. Even if it's not direct, like that's then influencing the decisions we make uh, when we're communicating and when we're building new products as well. So it might not always be obvious, but that very much those leaders do influence how we go into the future.
Mm,
Yeah, and you see that in various areas, especially in the serious game stuff. The technologies and the capabilities that you're seeing in the games and entertainment space, have a bit of a lag time, but then you'll see them in those other industries like mining and health and education. I always love the VR, and when they asked Lockie Palmer, who really started off this whole Oculus and the VR craze back in 2012, what industry do you see this being most useful for? He said games, but we've seen since then that it's not just games that have really utilized and embraced the VR aspect. You can see that in the engagement, in mining and all those other areas as well. It's just mind-boggling sometimes when you can create a piece of technology or a program and then just seeing it being used in so many other areas that you just didn't even think of.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
All right. Well, that brings us to a close of the Gamifying Government panel for this year. I'd like to thank Joe, Terry Ann, and Chris for joining us and coming along for this panel. I just want to reiterate again that the views expressed today have been purely of the members specifically and not of their respective government departments unless they specifically stated that. So please don't go off and say Defence said this or Office of the Arts said that. We're all here trying to showcase to everyone how we are better engaging with the public, how awesome the public service is, and how we are utilising new and emerging technologies to the best of our abilities. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Hopefully, there's been lots of questions in the Discord, and we look forward to seeing you all in person at PAX Aus in 2022 for hopefully the 5th Gamifying Government panel then. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.